Torah Ord, Parshas Lech Lecha, page 22, top paragraph. Okay, now the Rebbe is explaining that Avram, you have to bring the Avram, this higher level of Chokhmah, the highest levels all the way down to Avam and Goyim, that it influences even the Ra, and they said the sparks fall down, and the Shema comes down, the sparks fall down, everything comes down to be able to elevate it. So he says, to understand these two lines we learned. But said by Shlomo Melech, for everything said 3,000 Mishalim. We find many times a Chacham, he knows something very well himself. He's not able to explain this intellectual concept to somebody else until before he explains it, he has to bind himself to the subject matter. What it is, what he's explaining. Because when you become one with what you learn, then it's yours. Then you can explain it. If it's something outside of you, then it's difficult to explain. That what is the trick, so to speak, to be able to find this deep wisdom in Dvarim Gashmim, Dvarim Tachtenim, into low physical things. You give a mashal from things. For that, you need a very great Chacham. That he's able to lower his Chachma even into lower things. Like we said, to explain something to a lower level intellectual person, you have to have more wisdom to be able to lower that deep wisdom into the wisdom of the lower person. And not only that, in that wisdom that you're lowering to the lower person lies the entire depth of the seichel. And that's what, like Moshe Rabbeinu said to the Yidden, and the Gemara learns out, you have to be 40 years, whether 40 years old or 40 years from when you heard it. But you have to have that level of Bina. But in that Chokhmah that the teacher taught, lies if he's a proper teacher, lies the entire depth of the Seichel.
Some people are brilliant, they know the concept, but they cannot bring it to Dibu.
Yeah, that's a mile and a chesadim. It says about the Arizal, couldn't write. Now, what do you mean? I don't know what it means, couldn't write. But the Arizal didn't write anything. The Arizal spoke, and Reb Chaim Vital, he was the main disciple of the Arizal, wrote it down. It says the Arizal wasn't shaykh to Ksiva. He couldn't lower himself to that level. But he's not talking about that concept. Shloim HaMelech was his brilliant Bina. He was able to find 3,000 Mishalim. What does it mean 3,000 Mishalim? Gimel Alaf and Madrega Shalamat Bimenu. He was able to lower it into, he didn't have to give 3,000 Mishalim for the same thing. In other words, 3,000 Mishalim is 3,000 levels of understanding that concept. Even though for himself he could have understood it. But that in order to lower it down, that I should understand it properly, you have to be able to tap into a higher level, level of higher than the level of Chachma. Then you could reveal Bina. But min Chachma atzmei, from Chachma itself, but you're not one with it, and Bina. That's why he said before that the Shadish of Bina is Atik. It says in Pasuk also. The source of Bina is Atik, and that is higher than Chochmah, and that Chochmah could be revealed into Bina only through Atik. Rakshayr Bina is Galsa is Galsa Atik, Vayel Danish Dalshiv Niskal Barochava. He says, Va'av can also over here. In order to have the level of Bina, which has a length and a width to it, from the level of Yud Chacham, which is in the Kud, and the Kud, Yud is a dot. There's no length or width. Now you need to create Bina of a length and a width. In the level of Atik, which is called Keitze Shel Yud, the crown on top of the Yud. Shaydei ze mispashet hayud behei. Okemavor bepardis shayud yesh gimel keitzen. The yud has three things to it. The crown is composed of three parts. Mikeitze tachtin nimshach hahei. Ubekeitze tachtin also has the keitze elyon. So in the lower crown, there's the higher crown. Which, whatever it means, it means. Therefore, this Yerid, the whole Maimon is explaining about Vayered Avram Mitzrayma, the whole inyan of the Yerida of Avram, that from Avram you bring it down into Avram. So even though Lecha Avram, they ask the question, Lecha Avram is a lower level than Avram. Because Avraham is Avamin Goyim. It means he's connected to Goyim. Avram is Avram. Ram means exalted, not connected to nations. So Lecha Avram is low. He says no, but in order for Avram to come into Avram, you have to tap into a level higher than both. In other words, for the Yedidus and the Neshama Beguf, in practical language, for the Neshama to function in the body and elevate the body, only through the Neshama coming down does it reach a level higher than Gan Eden, which is where the Neshama is basically. Because it needs to reach a higher level. L'chein vayelech masav mineged. Chesed into base kel from Lashmo Maida Lamata, Umilmata Lamaila, Hashem Anira Ad Hashem Stam. So Avram Avinu Holach and Esei Anegba was the Rotz of Hashem, like we learned many times. It was Mamaila Lamata, Mamata Lamaila. It was all those things that Avram Avinu had to bring down the Maila into Mata and elevate the Mata into Maila. So that was the Aved of Avram Avinu. She says, Vine, love and inyan zaba Aveda. What does it mean in the practical Aveda? Okay, that's what Avram Avinu did. And like we learned, that the whole inyan of Lech Lecha is the mission statement of all Jews for all times. And it's Vayered Avram Mitzrayma. That's the Neshama coming into Mitzrayim, right? And that is the koyach from a higher level. He says, Amru, it says, Nevli Chachma Shot Maila. Torah, the flowing of Chachma of Hashem is Torah. Because Torah is Chachma Shalach HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Right? Torah is Hashem's Chachma. But it comes down into physical object. Torah doesn't stay Lamaila. Torah is Leiba Shemayimi. On the contrary, now we have to matan Torah. Torah has no the heavens have no jurisdiction over Torah, because Torah is not there. She'atvei Torah b'dvar gashmi chakim leiba chacham yadiyah. Ki ine chachma al yeinam. The understanding of Elokus ein lo asagad adavke b'slabshes b'dvar gashmi. The only way you can really get connected to Hashem is only when it comes into Gashmistic things. Through Chochmah, you can't connect to Hashem completely, because it's abstract. It's only in Chochmah. In our Chochmah, is Hashem is Leiba Chochmah Yadiyah, right? And like we learned in Torah and Pasuk Leo, which is next week's parsha, that Andul Chakim Leiba Chochmah Yadiyah means in Atzilut, it's not even the level of Chochmah as a practical Chochmah. Chochmah of Atzilut is only the source of Chochmah.
Avram couldn't connect to as much as Avraham did.
Correct.
Because it was Chochmah.
Correct. He says, "Adai b'lekiches esrig al derech mashul." Therefore, the holding of an esrig, mi'ach shal chachma lo beshes beit, because Torah comes into the gashmiistic thing. Kilo eichid b'chachma yeinu. So then, when you do a mitzvah, you're connecting to Hashem through Torah, which is chachma shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but you're connecting. And he says like this: "V'nei hamshach es chachma yeinu b'dvarim gashmim." How can chachma come into gashmis? We learned it's two opposites. He says that's only through Or HaKesed. That's the level, like you said before, of Atik. In other words, connecting gashmistic object to make it holy, not in an array of holiness, a Gan Eden, Ziva Shechina, to make it mamish the essence of Hashem in this chachma, in this gashmistic thing, has to come from the level of Kesed. Because Torah is openly chachma, right? But the source of Torah is Lamaila, because Tayyag mitzvah is 613 biblical, and Zayin Rabbanan is Tarach 620, which is Tarach Amode'er, which is the word Kesed. So in other words, only when Torah, Taryag mitzvahs, and Zayin mitzvahs Rabbanan come into a Gashmistic world, when it comes into a Gashmistic world, then you have the level of Keser, not only the lower level of Keser, the higher level of Keser, Atik, that you're connecting with the essence of Hashem. In other words, we learned many times the expression, Keser is a mamutza. Keser is the intermediary between Elokus and world. World, I mean the four worlds. So Keser is the intermediary. Now, any intermediary, if you have in a chain, okay, there's link 1 and 3. Now, what connects 1 and 3 is link 2. Now, link 2, in order to connect 1 and 3, has to have a little bit of 1 and a little bit of 3. Because if it doesn't have 1 or 3, how can it connect 1 to 3? And therefore, you notice in a link, the part of A goes into B, and B goes into C. So the B connects A and C, right? So therefore, Atik connects Elokus and world. If it connects Elokus and world, it has to have both levels. So it has to have the level, what's called Atik, which means removed. Atik means removed from days, which in Chassidus and Kabbalah language is called Pchina Tachteina Shebamaitzel, the lowest level of Ma'atzil, not Atzilus, the one that makes Atzilus, which is the essence of Hashem, Malukus. So Keser has a level that's Pchina Tachteina Shebamaitzel, that's Atik. And then you have the lower level of Keser, which is Arich Ampin, the long face, but it's a face which comes into Atzilus, versus Ze'er Ampin, the 6 midas, which is called the short face, because Arich is in Keser, so it's higher than Chochmah, so it's much greater than the midas of Zoh. But Keser has these 2 levels in it. If Keser has these 2 levels in it, then it has Pchina Tachteina Shebamaitz, which is Atik, then it has the level of Arich. But here he's saying, in order to connect Elokus with world through Torah, which is Chachma, you must have mitzvahs.
There is no direct connection between Zah and Atik?
Huh?
Between Atik and Zah, without...
There is. Zah ba'atik achid v'talya. But whatever, I don't know. Let's leave it at that. Yeah, there is a connection. But the bottom line is that in order to connect Chochmah with Gashmias, in other words, in order to connect Avram to Avraham, you need to tap into the level of Keser, which is higher than Chochmah, and therefore that level can connect both these 2 levels together. So in Aveda, it means connecting the highest levels of Elokus with the lowest levels of world is through mitzvahs. Because mitzvahs are the Ratzein Hashem, not the Chochmah Hashem. Torah is Chochmah Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Mitzvahs are the Tzeinah Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, what he wants. Ratzin is a higher power than Chochmah. And that's why we learned in the class Monday night, last night, Lech Lecha me'artzcha u'me'meladetecha u'me'beis avicha. It doesn't make sense. If I'm leaving, so where do I leave first? I leave from my house first, then I leave to my neighborhood, and then I go out of my neighborhood. Here the pasuk says, Lech lecha fa'artzecha, meladetecha, and beis avicha. Backwards. The pasuk doesn't make sense. I should tell them, leave your father's house, leave your neighborhood, and leave your country. Leave your land. But this is the avoid of the Jew, the mission statement. A Jew has to leave Artzecha Yerotzing. Melatcha refers to your teva, your birthplace, meaning your nature, your teva. Beis Avicha means your seichel. So Jew is obligated. The Torah is telling us first you have a will, then you have your nature, then you have your intellect. So these things, ala aretz asher areka, to the ratzin, aretz is ratzin, which are sharar echo, that comes to the level of re'iyah. But that's the Aveda. The Aveda has to be, first you have to change your will. I don't mean the relative will. You have to change your ratzin. And then you could change your nature. And then you could change your seichel. Otherwise the pasuk is going in the wrong order. But you can't leave your country before you leave your father's house. These are the various different levels. Okay, 1 second.
How could the instruction for the higher be in the Lord?
Huh?
How could the instruction for the higher be in the Lord? How could the mitzvot?
Because noetz tchilasim b'seifen, seif ma'asim machshava tchila, the ultimate goal is the end. In America, they say, what's the bottom line? Yeah? Whatever you do, what's the bottom line? Get to the point, right? Bottom line means the tachten. Not the seichel, the philosophy, this, you know. What's the bottom line? The bottom line means the line that connects in the bottom. I mean, the lowest level is what connects us to Hashem. Yeah, that's what the Rebbe's opinion was. You meet a Jew, don't talk philosophy with him. Go put tefillin on with him. Have him light Shabbos candles. Oh, by the way, close his phone.